Welcome to the Elevated Chat Room. It's your host, Dwayne Malone. We have Mr. Lonzo Jones with us. Today we're going to have a great time. Elevate your mind, elevate your life. Let's go.
Welcome to the Elevated Chat Room. Hey, we got another episode. Topic for tonight is overcoming education's hurdles. Insight from an educator. So we got a special guest with us on tonight. He goes by the name of Hunter Johnson. He's a high school history teacher. I'm going to let him fully introduce himself. Take it over, Hunter.
Well, first, thank you guys for having me tonight. It's been about 2 years since I've been in this building again, so the walkthrough was incredible. I know I made the joke earlier, but I'll say it again. It really was like coming out of Egypt. It really was. I'm proud of all of you guys. It's incredible to see what you guys are doing here. Y'all are in the business of changing children's lives every day. I'm in that same business, and it's a good one to be in.
Yes,
so first, just thank you for having me. But yeah, this is I'm about to finish up my third year teaching history. I've taught ninth grade all 3 years so far. I started teaching in Selma. I taught in Dallas County for 2 years, and then this is my first year at Decatur High School teaching ninth grade history.
Sweet. Well, like I said, man, we want to welcome you to the podcast. It's an honor to have you, man. And like I said, we go back. He's a volunteer back with us when we was, getting this thing off the ground.
Absolutely.
So we're going to go ahead and jump into it tonight. Like I said, the topic is overcoming education's hurdles, insight from an educator. So, my guy, Hunter, how do you stay resilient amidst teaching challenges? Because I know it's challenging. How do you stay resilient?
Great question. Resilience is super important. I was actually having this conversation with a colleague the other day. The thing about a career in education,
are you good?
Is that the highs are really high and the lows are really low. So, some days are really, really great. And, obviously some days are incredibly challenging. So that's, resilience happens every day in small ways and big ways. I think it's important to never forget why you went into this career. If you are not really into bringing happiness to children and like empowering them and, really trying to make their lives better, this is not the job for you. I'm just going to be upfront with you, so like if you're not into like, helping kids, this is probably not the job for you. So, just remembering why you went into it. That's what keeps you resilient, right? Also, the reward you get out of that light bulb moment, right? When you help a child reach, the light bulb goes off in their head and like they have that moment of understanding and realization. Like as a teacher, there's really no greater, summit than that. That's like the best thing in the world. So those moments keep you going. They don't happen every day.
Right.
But when they do, you're very grateful for them. And, it keeps you moving on.
So when we say challenges, like give me an example of a challenge in in your world as a educator. What does a challenge look like?
Well, can you hear me? Is that better?
Are you good?
Okay. So you have kids?
Yeah.
How old are they?
7 and 9.
Okay. So when's the last time you were in a high school?
Today.
Yeah. How long were you there?
A few hours.
Yeah. Yeah. So, any school environment post-COVID is not what it used to be.
Okay.
And I mean that in the sense of like, kids brought up in COVID, they don't have the classical understanding of like why we go to school, what a school is, what the purpose of school is, right? Like, not only are you here to learn English, math, science, and history, but like, this is an entry into society and like how to act as a citizen and how to be, respectful of those that are different from you and like, learn how to speak well and, those things like that. So the biggest challenge recently has been seeing the effect of that on our students. Like we know that now they're kind of really years behind in many ways, but COVID had a really lasting impact on just how like kids have developed socially. So it's rough seeing that sometimes with some of our students. I worry about that as they get into, like older and past high school years where we're there to help them with that. So it's been interesting to see that. I don't know if you guys have looked into how it's like affected literacy, but they're talking about like a functionally illiterate population of over like 15 million people in the United States. Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
So, and just to be honest with you, my first year teaching, right, I was one of those guys that like went right out of college, happy go lucky right into it. But then to have seniors that I taught that like still could not read, that's a major thing. So when you say something about being resilient, and I wasn't trying to be funny when I said when's the last time you were in a high school, but like some of our students have some severe things going on when it comes to things like that, and it breaks my heart. And those are some of the harder things that we deal with, right? Because to look at a 17-year-old that cannot pick up a book and read something, it just breaks your heart.
But the crazy thing is, when you think about it, is like he didn't just start not reading. This was something that he couldn't do for years.
Yep.
So what does COVID have to do? I mean, if you wasn't reading before 2020, then of course you're not going to be reading after 2020 unless you put in some, a lot of time and effort and energy.
Absolutely. And when trust me, nothing made me angrier than like realizing like, well, where were the 11 teachers he had before me?
Exactly.
Well, that guy, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, anyway, yeah. So that makes that can make you absolutely crazy. But no, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So, we struggle with that every day. At the end of the day, what I try to remind myself of is that the greatest goal that I have for my kids is that they graduate, they get into a profession that they love and that is something that they can support themselves and their family with.
Yeah.
That they become a good citizen, and maybe if they learn a little world history along the way, we've done good.
Okay. You got something on order, my guy?
No, sir.
All right. So before I go on, like, why did you get into teaching? Like, what did you see in that, or what pulled you to do that? Why teach?
Good question.
That is a great question, and actually, that question brought me right to this building 2 years ago. So we're going to go way back. When I was an undergrad at Valdosta State, this would have been in like 2011, 2012. I volunteered at Valdosta High School. And the thing about a lot of these deep South towns, I mean, you guys will know this just as well as anybody, is that some of these towns in the South, it's kind of like Brown versus Board, just never really happened, and so Valdosta was one of those places where it was literally like the black school and the white school. Yeah. So you had the county school, which was the white school, and then the black school was the city school.
Gotcha.
And the history department at Valdosta would send students to kind of help tutor the, math, science, all that stuff. So I went as a history tutor. And one of my kids that I was tutoring was passing all of his classes, like A's and everything, but he was failing history. And I knew he was smart. Everybody knew he was smart. And so one day I just asked him, I was like, dude, like, what's up with history? What's going on here? And he looked up at me, and what he said, I will never forget. He'd said, we never learn about people that look like me.
Mm.
And that hit me in the chest like a shotgun. And I've never forgotten that. So one of the great things about UNA, there are many great things about UNA, but one of them is that they have a Black Studies and a Black History program. And so when they started that, I was like, I have to do that. I want to do that. But again, like we were saying earlier, this was like right in the middle of George Floyd.
Yeah.
The protests downtown. Everything we were having a national conversation about, I was having like an inner conversation about that and education and remembering that little boy in Valdosta. So, it was a crazy, crazy time those couple of years. And so one of the ways that I just started reaching out, I got in touch with one of the guys that was running for mayor in Sheffield, and he was like, "You have to come and try and help at the Jump Project." And I had never heard of it. I didn't know what it was.
Wow.
And by the way, I went to the building that you guys were still in with the one room downtown. That's where I came to.
That was on Abrams, John.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
That was at least 4 years ago, 5 years ago, because we started renovating this building in 2020 during the pandemic.
That's crazy.
And we had to shut everything down in 2020. And so that's why, and everything timed out perfectly because we had time on our hands then. Yeah. And so that's when we started renovating the building.
Right.
That's so crazy.
During the pandemic.
That is so crazy.
Yeah.
That's mind blowing. But yeah, that boy with the calmness of a adult far beyond his years just looked up at me and said that, and I have never forgot that. Every day that I go in and unlock my classroom door, I think about him. Every day, every morning. I've never forgotten about what he said to me.
That's good stuff. I mean, I can understand where he's coming from. It's like, man, like, do we not play a part in history? No matter what color you are.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm only learning about something that never looks like me, of course, you know, I'm going to lose interest, and all of a sudden one day when it just kind of finally boils up, I'm going to ask you about it.
It's common sense. It's common sense to feel like that.
Yeah.
So, and you know, it was in such a childlike, innocent way. You know, there was no hatred in his voice. He wasn't angry. He was just stating a fact, you know, and I have never forgotten that ever.
That's what's up.
Ever.
So let me ask you this then, as we just kind of shift a little bit, what advice do you have for a struggling educator, somebody that's just going through it, they about to throw the towel in? What advice would you give to an educator that's struggling?
I mean, again, at the end of the day, this job has extremely high highs and extremely low lows. So my advice that I would give is that where you begin, your first year of teaching is going to determine a lot. It's going to determine a lot. And by the grace of God, where I am now is like, Shangri-La compared to where I was at. Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the first things I told our new teachers that came in this year is I said, you have no idea how lucky you are that this place is where you get to start your career.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. You have no idea. And I said, so don't ever forget that. Right. When you're griping about something crazy, like, oh God, this, 3D color copier is taking too long. Just check yourself, because like there are some schools that don't even, that's so far beyond anything that they would ever be capable of having that it's ridiculous. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And really, not to repeat myself, but again, like if trying to change kids' lives is not what really like motivates you and empowers you, this is not the job for you. It's just not, because you take stuff home. It's just natural to do that. I interact with 120 students every day. A lot of them want to be there. Some of them don't. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's that dynamic can get a little daunting sometimes. Right. When especially right at a time like this, we're going through meetings right now about like, how are we going to keep these kids that want to drop out in? Home visits, trying to talk to them, trying to talk to mom and dad, if they'll talk to us, right? Yeah. Sometimes they don't pick up the phone, things like that. So, if you're one of those rose-colored eyed people like I was not that long ago, try to be more realistic with yourself, set realistic standards for yourself. And if you're going to do it, put your heart into it every single minute. Because at the end of the day, you could be the one person that this teenager sees that's going to be a positive influence on them during the daytime. And boy, is that a gigantic responsibility to have. So if you're not going to be all in it, it's a hard gig. It's a hard gig because you give a lot of yourself.
Yeah, the teachers that really, really care, they sacrifice a lot.
Yes.
Sacrifice a lot of time from their own families. And I've seen it, and that's how you can tell like some of the great teachers from some of the ones that's just there, they're just getting by, not the ones that are like all in. So struggling is going to happen.
100%.
100%. Okay.
And, from where I started, as soon as I graduated, I applied to every opening in the state of Alabama. I was delivering pizza at the time. I was still bartending when I was finishing up, but I mean, I was just so ready to stop delivering pizzas.
Yeah.
You know, like I was like, please God, get me out of here. I will go. I will go anywhere. I will go to Selma.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I went and I spent 2 years there, and I will never forget my experience there. But I will say that, you know, we have communities that are in desperate, dire need of resources and community. You know, if only there was a rescue me everywhere. You know, truly. And Selma is where I started, and it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about the kind of teacher I was. I learned very quickly that if I've never been like a screaming person or a yelling type or anything like that. But boy, if you can make a kid laugh, you've got them. Like that's a really good way to like start to earn their respect. Is that if you can make them laugh, making them laugh is so much more powerful than like getting on to them for something. If you can make a kid laugh, they'll come along on the ride for you. Truly. And so I try to use that, like, all the time. If I can make somebody laugh, that's what I'm going to try and do. And so these new teachers, don't lose your sense of humor. You're going to need it. It's going to save you. And I want to tell you a story. I want you to tell me what you think of this.
Okay.
So this is the day I decided to leave Selma. So I was trying to get a field trip together for my kids to take them to the Legacy Museum. Have you guys ever been there in Montgomery? Mm-mm. I highly recommend you guys go see it. It's an incredible museum. And we were trying to get the field trip ready, and she was saying something like, well, it's going to be, the kids are going to have to pay $150 or something. And I was like, have you lost your mind? Like, these are Selma students, you know what I mean? And I was like, Miss, we can't do that. That's out of the question. And the principal turned to me and said that I would have to talk to the superintendent, that they were just there to build the resume. And as soon as that came out of their mouth, I said, if that's why you're here, then I don't know why I'm here. I can't be here.
Wow.
If that's what's motivating you to be here, then why am I here? So that was the moment I decided to leave. And I hated it. It made me incredibly sad because I loved the kids I had worked with there. But if a ship is sinking and there's 25 people on it and only 4 of them are trying to get water out of the boat,
right,
we're going down. We're going down. So,
man, and see, that's what I'm saying. Like, and I'm gonna tell you this: these students know when the teachers or the administration is not all in, when their heart is not in it. They know. I've just spoke with about 65 juniors and seniors today, and that was one of the things that they were saying. It was like, no, we know when our teachers truly cares, and we know when they don't.
100%.
And so that you're doing the kids a disservice, you're doing the school a disservice, you're doing the community a disservice if you're not there for the right reasons.
100%.
So why get into teaching if you don't want to deal with kids?
100%.
Like why? 100%. Yeah, that don't even make sense. What's the major difference? What was the major difference that you noticed between Educator and Selma?
Oh, I mean, my Lord, resources. Absolutely resources. And the thing that kills me about Selma is the rich history of the place.
Mm-hmm.
And, its story is incredible, but the blight there is just hard to comprehend. Have you guys been down there recently? I mean,
I haven't been in a few years.
Okay. Yeah. So, it's hard there. The tornado, we had the tornado while I was still down there a couple years ago, last spring. Did a lot of damage then, the stuff that still hasn't been fixed. But, the community's in dire need of resources. And unfortunately, the rich history it has not sustained what the community has needed since, Bloody Sunday.
Yeah.
So it's in dire need of not only educational resources, but community resources, familial resources. That was another really hard aspect of the job down there was just that there were some days I would just go home and feel like their family didn't even care. Like if I can't pick up the phone to have a conversation with you about what's going on with your kid, and I've tried to call you 5, 10 times and still can't speak to you as the parent, that worries me as well. You know, the dynamic of that is hard to understand, because at the end of the day, we're on the same team. I'm here to help your child as well. But we need help from mom and dad, right? Like we're on the same team. So that was a really difficult part of the job, was just the amount of the lack of parental involvement in education. Now, that is not the case everywhere. That's not what I'm saying, but that was my experience.
Okay.
Down there. Yeah.
Man, you would think that if you got a school in your district, that you want that school to truly succeed. So what's the drawback of them not, like, why aren't they able to get resources? How does that work as far as getting resources for school? Do you have any idea how that aspect works?
Yeah. So each school in the state, I don't know the details about this, but I do know each school in the state gets an allotment from the state government. If you here's the thing, if you are a bad performer, you receive federal funding. So if you're a low performing school, you have access to federal funding.
Mm.
Now, as soon as you become a good performing school, what do you think happens to that federal money?
They strip it.
It's done, right? It's done. So there's an incentive, unfortunately, for some schools in some of these low performing areas to stay underperforming, right? And because that's where the federal money comes from.
Yeah.
And but so it's a combination of federal funding, state funding, and then there's what's called local funding, right? Where if you live in a district, that's doing well, so think something like Vestavia Hills or Hoover, right?
Yeah.
Those are school districts that actually have access to local funding because the tax base is so good there, right? So they're able to supplement their funding, and some of the schools don't even, they don't need any federal funding because their local funding is so good. But that was a trend. Now, you want to talk about something that disturbs a lot of teachers, right? And we talk about these things, is that well, why is it that there's an incentive to stay underperforming with the money? That does not make sense to any of us, right? That doesn't make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Not at all. So it's a I don't know. It's a conundrum, that one. It's a conundrum. And I really don't have the answer to it, but I know what's happening now is not working for sure.
That's good stuff, man. Like I said, this is the Elevated Chat Room. Elevate your mind, elevate your life.
Let's go.
We got Hunter Johnson in here. He's an educator. He's a history teacher at Educator High School here in Alabama.
Quick question, Hunter.
Yes.
I do have a question. You tapped into it a little bit. What's the uniqueness of what you bring to the table as an educator, as a teacher? And when I say this, we know that you are a very humble person. So we're not just saying it for you to boast on yourself or anything like that. But I think for the other listeners, especially educators, should hear the uniqueness that you bring to the table, because just from hearing you speak thus far, we see that your heart is definitely in this and is more than just a job.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind sharing that with us.
Oh man, that's a good question that I've never had to think about before. I will say this, that when I think back to interviews or something where while they ask you well, why would you, why will you be the teacher that we want? I always think back to my both of my grandmothers. So I've been a history geek my whole life. My mom's mom was a paleontologist. And so what cooler gift as a child than to have your Nana bring you dinosaur bones from a dig or something like that, so, and the stories she would tell me and the videos she would send back from her digs and things from it was just incredible. And then the stories that my dad's mom, my granny, would tell me about just her days growing up here in Decatur, and what the stories she would tell me about the 60s in Decatur and the 50s in Decatur and what the World War II period was like. Just listening to them growing up my whole life, and always just being interested in our past and being made to understand that our past matters. We can learn from it. Um, it's not stupid to learn history. It's actually quite meaningful to know where we came from. And because the reasons we are here today are a direct reflection of what has happened in the past. So it's just important to know that. So I don't know. I guess when you ask me what my perspective is that, I come into the classroom with knowledge, not saying that I know everything, but I truly think I have confidence enough that if a student is asking me a question that I don't know the answer to, we're going to get him in the direction he needs to go and get him an answer as soon as possible. I try to absolutely bring a sense of humor into my classroom every single day. I think if you ask any of my students that, they will tell you that they laugh in my room every day. My classroom is like a place of love and joy, and
Sweet. I like that.
So I don't know. I try to have a lot of love, a lot of laughter, and and if we're learning some history along the way, we're doing good.
Sounds good to me.
It's good.
Man, how do you empower students to overcome their hurdles? Like when you see a student that's struggling, how do you empower them to push through and to overcome what they're dealing with?
Yeah, so I think it's experience, right? I have not had a perfect life. I have certainly made mistakes in my life that I've had to account for. So, when I look a kid in the face and say, "Hey, man, I know where you've been. I know what it means to struggle with this or struggle with that," I'm telling him the truth, that I understand where he's coming from. Kids are dealing with a lot today.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The worst one that has affected me so far is we lost a kid in Dallas County to a fentanyl overdose at the cafeteria table.
What?
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
And he had received, I guess he was having an edible, and his father, I guess it had come from his father. His father was a dealer or something like that, and they go to pick him up from the cafeteria. He's foaming out of the mouth and he's dead. Right. So our students today are dealing with things that, might make learning about Albert Einstein or King Henry VIII a little secondary.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So like those moments where I can, yes, I'm speaking to them as a teacher, but I really am trying to talk to them as somebody that says, "Hey, listen, I'm not that much older than you, but please hear me when I say, like, it matters the decision you make and where your actions have consequences, right? Because my actions have had consequences. Everyone's actions have had consequences. So something like when these kids are dealing with, homelessness, drug use, things like that. It's those things are rough and it's hard. And those are the conversations where it's hard to keep some of these kids in school because they really don't see the value of getting it, right? Because their life is so, the chaos in it is just so primary that anything that's trying to get them out of that chaos becomes secondary. And, it's hard to once you are in that cycle, it's hard to come out of that cycle.
Yeah, and I can see that kids, if it's not that important, trying to figure out the easiest way to get out. So the dropout rate, is that something that has increased, or is it about the same, decreased since the pandemic?
Yeah. So over all schools, like if you took the nation, it's gone up a little bit, nothing crazy.
Okay.
But we have noticed in some of the data, the Alabama data particularly, that the dropout rate is kind of going up a little bit. And we should be concerned about that. We should be concerned that we have students in the 12th grade that cannot read. We should be concerned, our students that they have to pass the citizenship test in 12th grade, right? That, we should be concerned that students aren't passing that. That's the same test that we make immigrants pass to become citizens of this country. Mm. And you being raised here don't know the answers to that. That's a problem.
Yeah, how are they passing if they can't read? Like what?
Yeah,
that doesn't make sense.
It's a conundrum to me as well. I don't know. It's a good question, right? Because again, they have been passed on in the system. They've just been passed on. Mm-hmm. And by the time they get to somebody that's like burning red, angry about why these people can't read, it's almost too late.
Yeah, but it still is like, what's the point of even having a school? Like,
Yeah, truly.
I mean, like your job as the basics. I mean, you want your students to know how to read and do math. I mean, now other stuff. If a kid didn't want to learn about social studies, I get that.
Yep.
That's not detrimental to life.
Yep.
But you being able to read,
Yes.
and you being able to do numbers, that's very important.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and the fact that you can pass kids, like as a parent, like and I think that's also they also play a role in that as well.
Yeah.
Because there's no way my kid can't read, and I know he can't read, but yet he's passing. And then you want to look at the school system and say y'all messed them up.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that I'm pretty sure that this probably happens in more of your low resource communities. Do you think
100%, right?
Okay.
Families that are unfortunately not situated like mine and your families were, right? You have two parents in the home,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure you do homework with your kids
Yes.
every night,
Yes.
right? Like, so you instill the value of an education, right? With the understanding that education helps you free your mind, which helps you free yourself, right? That's the whole point. Or me, who had two parents in the house that was making sure that we were getting our homework done. And see, that's the thing, is that's always been my thing that I struggle with the most. How do we deal with the students that are in families that just don't, education is not on their list of priorities, right? Because those are the ones that are getting left behind and passed on and thrown to the wayside. And they're the ones that are in the most dire need of our help. But again, when a student has been raised in environments where education is not something to be valued, it's very hard to instill that value so late in life.
Yes, I agree. Because they're already set in their ways.
Yes.
You know, unless you can, and then a lot of times they don't believe that they can actually achieve that. They don't believe that they can, learn to read. They don't believe they can do well in math. They don't believe they can go to college. They don't believe that. So if they don't believe in it, what's the point of them even trying?
Yeah.
So I understand that aspect. So it's a full circle. It goes back to the first, everything starts in the home.
Oh, 100%.
And then now if dad says it's important, or if mom says it's important, then it's important.
Yep.
Because they're going to make sure that you are doing what's necessary to achieve certain goals, certain benchmarks.
Yeah.
And I know when I was growing up, like that was one thing that my dad was big on. It was education and respect. He was like, I don't care how many sports you play. If you're capable of making A's and B's, you're going to make A's and B's.
Yep.
Now, you don't have to make straight A's because you're doing all these other extracurricular activities.
That's right.
But he was like, now, if I wasn't playing sports, then are you smart enough to make all A's? Yes, sir. Well, then I expect all A's.
Yep.
But that was an expectation in my home. There was structure in my home. There was accountability in my home. So therefore, you're going to get production in your home.
And it's not even like, yes, it's great when they go to college, but like, it's not even the college thing. I want them, like, if they learn a trade, if they get into, which is, what you guys are starting to do here now with these kids working with their hands. It is so important for them to understand that they can make a career for themselves and be happy doing that stuff, right? Like, I never understood that lie that got told to my generation. I'm sure it was in y'all's generation about like, like everybody has to go to college and all that stuff. But like, no, that's not how it has to be. Like, if you can absolutely be happy and make a life for yourself working with your hands and probably make a lot of money doing it.
You're learning. You're still learning. You go to college to learn. Yeah.
Way more money than me.
Yeah, you got skills. You got your plumbers. You got your electricians. You bought all these different things. So yeah, I agree with you when it comes to college. If you're not going to college for something that you just absolutely have to go to college for, there's no point in going to college and getting $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 in debt to get a job where you're going to be getting paid $40,000, $50,000, $60,000.
Yep.
So, but don't get me wrong. I do value education. But there's different ways to become educated.
Yes.
We talk about this all the time. You got YouTube. You got different courses you can buy now for $1,000. Or you got free access to these courses online. And you can learn. You got a cheat code. You can take what a plumber has learned. He's been a plumber for 20 years. He's got a course on YouTube where he's just teaching stuff on YouTube. And you can go learn from a guy who got 20 years of experience. And you can learn exactly what he's learned in 5 days.
Yep.
Or you just do a walkthrough and fix something in your house, or it's just different ways to learn now. So like my wife, she works at a community college, so my sons, they get to go to school for free at a community college. So my thing is this: when they get about 10, 12 years old, look, you're athletic, you're smart, you're musically gifted. If you don't get a scholarship, you're going to a community college.
Yeah.
I'm not paying for you to go to school. Why would I pay for you to go to school when you have the tools to get a scholarship, or you can go to school for free? So if you don't do what you're supposed to do in whatever field and get that scholarship, then you lose your options.
Yeah.
You don't have options no more. You're not going here, there. No.
Yep.
You didn't step up and do what you're supposed to do. Now I'm gonna help you. I'm not gonna be like, hey, this is all on you. No, I'm gonna, if you come to me and say this is what I want to do, then I'm gonna make sure you get there. But you're gonna have to play your part.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking, kids that go to school for 4 years. But I'm always talking like, look, you do realize, like me, I went to school to get a business degree. Okay. I could have literally just went to follow somebody that's doing the business that I want to do. Just, just volunteered or work with him as an internship or something like that for 2 years, learn the business, and then go start it myself.
Yeah.
Or get on YouTube. Hey, I want to start this kind of business. Get on YouTube, find it, and then I can go do it.
Before colleges, that's how everybody did it.
Come on.
That's literally
Right.
how everybody did it.
You learn from somebody next door.
And you asked about the dropout rate. One of the great things that I think Decatur is doing is next year we're opening up what we have the career academies of Decatur.
Okay.
So students that know they're not going to college can go ahead and sign up freshman year that their school is going to be the career academy. They'll do their core classes online.
That's dope.
Get them out of the way in 2 years. And then they're learning, like the Toyota plant's a great example. The Toyota plant partnered with us to come in and build a machine shop where they can learn how to paint cars.
Sweet.
Wow.
There's the culinary school there, the barber shop, on and on and on, computer science, right? So they'll go spend their day there learning their trade. And hopefully by senior year, if they get a contract position, they'll go to school for just a couple hours in the morning and then they'll go to work for the rest of the day.
How dope is that?
Yeah.
There's programs here, like through the community college. My wife works at Shelton, not Shelton, but Northwest Shoals Community College, and she was talking about how they have dual enrollment.
Yes.
Like you can literally be in high school and then taking courses in community college, and then by the time you graduate, you got a whole certificate in boiler making or electrician or
Yes.
plumbing or
Yes.
carpentry, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And now you walk into a job making $45 an hour
Oh, yeah.
coming out of high school.
Yes.
So you already got a high school diploma and a
Yes.
certificate, basically a 2-year certificate, 2-year degree, and boom, now you get to go and make this money.
Yep.
So why would I
It's great.
tell my son, hey, I need for you to go to college, get a 4-year degree in business, come out $80,000 in debt,
Yeah.
and then go start your business? No.
Yes.
Like, we have to be so forward thinking as parents that we set them up, and we've been talking about credit a lot here recently. As a parent, you want to set your kids up to where when they are ready to start their own business, they have access to funds, they have a credit score, or they can piggyback off your credit,
Yeah.
so that way you can set them up for success. That's what parents are supposed to do.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to set you up for failure. I'm not supposed to be sitting there watching you not be able to read. Come on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
my thing is like just going back to what we said, it's a full circle that everybody plays a part, but the parents,
Oh,
they play the most significant part there is, because when I sat down today with these kids at the high school, one of the questions we asked was, who was your role model and why? And one of the kids, when he was saying, he was like, I don't want to sound cliche, but my dad is my hero because of blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
And I was like, well, hold up, man.
that's the best hero to have.
Yeah. I said, after Jesus, you know what I'm saying? I was like, if if you're going to have a role model, especially as a male figure, your father is supposed to be the one.
100%.
So never talk about his cliche. That's how it should be.
Yeah. Because if you were to ask me that question, that's what I would say. My dad.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My dad, my grandfather. And then it was my dad, my grandfather, and then it was my basketball coach in high school. All were black males. And I'm not knocking white males by no means, but where I grew up, those were the ones who had significant influence in my life. Yeah. And they made it a point to. So my dad, man, just hard nosed, he's gonna get it done.
Yeah.
And he, like I said, he instilled education, he instilled respect, hard work. If you say you're gonna do something, then do it. If you say you're gonna show up, you better show up. My granddad, he was more so like entrepreneurship mindset. He was also about making sure you take care of your wife. You know, he would take care of my grandmother. You know, open the door for her. Little small things that you watch. My granddad would drive us around when we was young. Me and my other cousins and my brother, he would pull up at different businesses and he'd be like, "Hey, grandson, what is that?" I was like, "It's a business. It's a building." He's like, "Yeah, it's a business." He was like, "Do you know who own that?" I was like, "No." He was like, "A man." I was like, "Okay, a man owns it." He was like, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" "I don't know, baseball player." He was like, "No, you're going to be a man. So you can own businesses just like him because you're going to be a man just like he's going to be a man."
That's right.
So he instilled, not me at the time, wait, you tripping.
Oh, yeah.
But when you think back on it, granddad was instilling something in us. And all of us now do something as a side hustle or we're entrepreneurs in some aspect.
What are you looking back on your teachers? Who were your favorites and like why did they stand out to you? What did you love about them?
Okay, so talk about my high school basketball coach. He was also the assistant principal.
Okay.
He stood out because he challenged us to become men. Okay. He demanded respect, but he also held us accountable. He wanted us to have a certain image. We were branding ourselves at an early age. Wear your shirt tucked in to school. On game days, you wear a shirt and tie. Yes, sir. No. So he was basically doing the same things my dad was doing at the house. So he was actually an extension of my father.
Yeah.
But he will also go out his way for you.
Absolutely.
When I applied for my first real job, he was one of my references. And he put in a great word for me because we had grew that relationship. He knew what type of man I had become. And I knew that I can trust him. And so, like I said, and then I had, there was a teacher in elementary school, Ms. Wyatt. She stands out to me. She was just so sweet, just so nice.
Yeah.
And, you know, just willing to accept me for who I was at that time, you know, and she saw things in me as well. And then my 5th grade teacher, she also saw that when she was like, "No, you're going to middle school. You need to be on your track to get an advanced diploma." She was like, "No, you're not getting a regular diploma when you go through this. You're smart enough to get an advanced diploma." So she saw something in me as well. But like, yeah, those would be the main ones that stood out for me because they made it a little bit more personable.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the key to doing it right there.
So let me ask you this. You got some?
Yeah, I got a quick question for you. So the question was talking about empowering students to get over hurdles.
Sure.
My question for you is, you know, oftentimes you hear teachers say now they having to be mentors, counselors, they having to play so many positions other than the position that they signed up for.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself having to be in those different roles?
Every day. Every day. I mean, we're being real right now. So last semester, we came back from lunch. You know, one of my kids said, "I'm not feeling well." I took a I guess it was like she took her I guess her ADD meds, and she said, "And I smoked a joint. I'm not feeling good." And so I was just like immediately put into like, okay, well, what's wrong with her?
Yeah.
Like, is she about to have a reaction, something like that? Things, you know, once kids know that you're going to tell them the truth, they do confide in you because they know that, you know, it's a safe space. They can do that. But right, that does come with restriction because by law, right, we are mandated reporters. So, you know, if it does rise to that occasion, we'll make sure that we get them in touch with the people that we feel that they need to be in touch with. But no, we are those people every day. And see, that's why I go back and say, listen, if you don't really love kids, this is not the job for you.
Yeah.
Because you are going to have to be everything to somebody
Everything.
every day.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they're at the end of the day, they're teenagers. Mm-hmm. We so easily forget that. Like that's like the one thing I see my colleagues forget the most is that we forget that every day we have decided to work with teenagers, and we and sometimes teenagers are going to act like teenagers. And, you know, we forget that sometimes. So I don't know. It's you have to be open to whatever they're going to come at you with. I feel very lucky to be a teacher that students feel comfortable to come up and say, listen, I'm dealing with this, or I need your advice on this or something like that. I feel very privileged to be in that position, that at
Mhm.
least they have some adult in their life that they're
Mhm.
willing to come and say, listen, I don't know what to do. What do I do? You
Mhm.
know? So to be that person is, you know, uh, it's a great thing to be that to those kids. But yeah, you are a combination of many different roles to these
Yeah.
people.
And I guess you would have to embrace that.
Yeah,
I mean, because it's coming. It's like, hey, as long as you're, sooner or later somebody's going to present a different issue. This week I had to be counselor. Next week I had to be the nurse. Next week I had to be a therapist.
yeah,
Next week I had to be a father figure. You just never know what role you're gonna play. But that's so what's dope about being a teacher, man. You get to affect kids in multiple ways.
yeah. Oh, and I never, ever, trust me, I laugh my butt off every day. I mean, that's another reason I love this job, is that there are just so many moments where you just laugh your butt off, because kids are kids, and they say the darndest things, as
Yes.
they say. So it's like, again, really high highs,
Yeah,
really low lows.
You said something about one of your kids that she smoked weed.
Yeah, she had, I guess she had, well, we really don't know, but I guess she had gotten off campus for some time during lunch, and I guess she thought that the weed had started to interact with
Meds.
her meds.
Yeah.
And she was kind of having an anxiety attack, and she came to him. She's like, I don't know what to do, but I'm having an anxiety attack right now.
So do you think that kids are using some type of drugs or alcohol more than what parents believe?
More than what those parents who are not at home with their kids believe.
Okay.
Right. So, like, what I mean by that is that, like, children that live in a household where at least one parent is in the home at all times, the chances of that just go exponentially down.
That makes sense.
Now, those who live in homes where parents are not in the home 24 hours a day, at least one,
Mm-hmm.
the chances of that just skyrocket. So, yeah, I think, of course, I think our popular culture deals with drugs a lot differently now than what pop culture did when we were in school dealing with drugs. So that's a whole nother aspect of it. But yeah, I do think that more students than we want to think do have at least some type of beginner's entrance into drugs. Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. So, next thing would be this then. How important is it to have innovations and adaptability in education? Basically, how important is it for you to be flexible, or for a teacher to be flexible and adaptable, and to be innovative, so class is not boring?
Yeah, that's a good one too. So I don't know. I've always said that as a history teacher, like, really, we have the whole world at our disposal. Like, it's not like we have to be sucked in on like algebra or equations or something like that. Like, we're everywhere. So the innovation part is easy, especially with the use of like multimedia. I use a lot of music to teach, right? Like, I have a whole music curriculum that we go, like, if we're starting off, like, if we're learning about, Columbus and the beginning of the slave trade or something, like, I always start that unit off with Bob Marley's Redemption Song, right? That's just a really good way to start the tone for that type of unit. So use a lot of music in the curriculum. I love having a movie at the end of a unit, right? Like, I think it's a really good way to wrap a unit together, is that if the kids can see a movie that's doing this story really well, I think that's an excellent way to kind of show them, with music and drama, the historical realities. We try to do like out of the box ideas. Like, one of the things we did at Decatur, we do a wax history museum where the students, dress up as a historical character, and then, like, they have to build their little button that you press, and they were set up in the gym, and you would just walk around and hit the button. They would do their skit, and then they'd go back, to
I like that, man.
anything that I can think of that will make it relatable to the kids in a way that they can understand it and start to think for themselves about it. That's how I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. And that could come in a variety of things. But even though we're doing all that innovative stuff, I'm still one of the teachers that is like old school when it comes to, in my classroom, you're going to read every day and you're going to write something every day, right? So even though we're doing all like cool multimedia stuff, it's still super important that in Mr. Johnson's class, you're going to write a lot and you're going to read a lot as well. Because that's just foundational principles to having a good education.
Let me ask this question. So what are some of the cans and cannots when it comes to teaching or educating history nowadays?
Dang,
good question.
These are like really good questions.
That's a good question.
Okay, I would say a cannot is like what we call experiential history. Like I'll never forget when we like when I was in high school when we were learning about the Holocaust, like my history teacher thought it was a good idea to like make us all go in the middle of the room and like smush together and be like, this is what the trains would have been like that carried you to Auschwitz. Like, no, that's not a good way to teach history. Actually, like you don't teach history through actual trauma. You just try to teach about the trauma. Or like when we went to, there was a PD we did at the Mobile History Museum last summer. And like one of the exhibits in the museum there on the slave ship, you can go put yourself in chains. Well, that's not a good look either. So that's a don't either, right? So like experiential history, right, where you turn it into having an experience, that never really goes over well, right? Because you don't want to create trauma. So try to stay away from that. I try to turn my kids into thinkers and not I don't want them to grow up and be angry about things in the past that they cannot change and that nobody can change. So I try to come at sensitive subjects with a variety of approaches. So when we're dealing with like sensitive topics like, the slave trade or Jim Crow or the Klan or the Holocaust, any of these really, really super, super heated emotional topics, the first thing I say is that, like, listen, at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do to change any of this. There's nothing I can do to change anything about this. But there is a way that we can learn something from what happened, right? We're not going to get angry. We're not going to try and bust statues down. We're just here to kind of learn what happened, not try and recreate it through some, articulation of our being angry about it, but just learn about it, try to digest it and see what we can do better and what we can learn from it. So, that's to me, those are like major do's and major don'ts for sure.
So where do you guys get your curriculum from?
The state. So it's called the Alabama Course of Study. Every grade and every class has one. So in my particular class for world history, I teach world history 1500 to the present. So we have 17, I think it's either 15 or 17 standards to get through the whole year. And that goes, if you wanted to like break it down, that goes from Mona Lisa to 9/11.
Okay.
That amount of time. So
you just have to cover all that.
You try to cover it all.
Okay.
By May 10th, May 15th. Yeah.
So when kids are taking their tests at the end of the, I guess 6 weeks, whenever it's test time, if you notice that most of the kids, don't do well, do you have to retest, or it just is what it is?
Yeah, so that's another great question. So not all of our kids will test together. So you have what are called 504s and IEPs. If a student with an intellectual disability, or maybe he's a low performer in some area, if the state has seen that he meets federal requirements for an IEP, he can be given an IEP. And what that means is that he might have access to accommodated test times, right? He might get extra time to take his test. Okay. He might get to have a test that's different from the other tests. He might go to a special room where he has a helper with him. So some of the kids will test that way. But if they don't test that way, they'll take the regular test. And if I see across the board that we were struggling with some things, we'll definitely spend like a few more days trying to go over some information and redo it. But at the end of the day, if what I see is that the people that are not performing well are the people that have been, skipping class or been absent a lot or not turning in their homework or they're not doing their notes right, like that's going to make me look at the data
Right.
a little differently
Makes
than
sense.
Okay,
that makes perfect sense. Um, let's go ahead and hit you with this one right here. Then, what systematic changes are needed in education? Don't think too long and deep. Don't hit them with the grand slam right now. But no, go in on it. If you got something, let us know what systematic changes are needed in education, in your own opinion.
I think it's super important for people to understand. Number one, that not all schools are equal, right? As Americans, we tend to think that just because we live in this great country, that everybody has access to the same things. That's just not the case. If you really do look at the numbers, your chances of being successful in your adult life are directly indicative of the type of school that you grew up with and that was in your school district, right? That if you want to talk about the number one indicators of your chances of poverty, drug use, early death to violence, things like that, the number one indicator that people can look to is what type of school you had while you were a kid. So it's super important. It's absolutely momentously important that people understand that not all schools are equal. The other thing that is super important to understand, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, is that even though Brown versus Board happened in 1954, does not mean that segregation in schools is over, right? There is a major problem. If you really want to talk about it, schools are more segregated today in the United States than they have ever been in our history. And sooner or later, we're going to have a conversation about that again, because we thought we had, had the national conversation about that in through the civil rights movement, but comes to find out we are still dealing with that. So those two things to me are the two big ones that are always in my mind, at least.
I know for a fact that when schools, let me just tell this right quick. So I'm originally from Tuscaloosa. There's a school in Tuscaloosa called Central Tuscaloosa. I think it was probably around 2005. I think 2004, 2005. They split the school. Okay. Now, for the longest, Central Tuscaloosa was the second biggest school in the state, only behind Hoover.
Wow.
Round
that's a big old school.
It was huge from I would say about 95, probably prior to that up until 2004, 2005. Second biggest school. So they split the school up. They split the school into, I think it was 3 schools. So you had, I think it was Palm Bryant, North Ridge, and then Central. So all of them pretty much are now 6A schools. So let's know how big it was. At that time, they split them up. It was 4A, and a 4A. But anyways, so I go to my cousin's graduation in 2008 from Central. All black. You went from it was pretty much the only city school in Tuscaloosa for the high school. If I'm not mistaken, Tuscaloosa. Yeah, it was the only city school. City high, everything else was county. Only city high school. It was huge. You split them up, and all of a sudden, now this school only has all blacks. So it's done in different ways.
Oh, yeah, but it's right there in the open.
You zone it off because all schools, all districts are zoning with a purpose.
100%.
So, but just pay attention to that, and that's why I feel like it's important for the parents to be able to choose where their kids go to school, not based off of where I live, but based off my choice.
Yes.
No matter if I live in Florence or Muscle Shoals or Sheffield. If I want to send my son or my daughter to the best school, then I should have that option. See, that will also make these other schools step their game up.
Yep.
But that's like I said, that's a whole nother topic.
That goes back to, though, why the number one indicator of your son's success is going to be what type of school was he in, right? And as a parent, you want that school to be the best it can possibly be,
right? Because
that is any indicator you want, sociology wise, like that, it would point to that being the number one indicator of how they're going to turn out is the type of school that they went to.
Wow.
So it's really important.
Yeah. And we've moved to a different school district than what we were. And that was one of the reasons why we moved. My wife was like, no, I want the kids to go to this school. So we moved literally right across the street. so we can get into, you know, what has been proven to be.
That's how some of these districts are split up, though. I mean, the same streets,
Yes.
two sides of them will go to, right? I mean, that can't be right.
You know, it's not right.
It can't be right.
There's a subdivision here. If you go out on 72, it's technically is Tuscumia address, but it's a new subdivision, nice homes, nice families,
Probably Muscle Shoals.
upper middle. It's Muscle Shoals.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, and it's smart on their behalf. I mean, why wouldn't you want that?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, hey, y'all not paying attention to this, you know. So, but that is just what it is. So we, as parents, all we're saying is just be mindful. You know, take education serious. Anything you want to leave? That was the last question that we had on the thing. Anything you want to leave? Anything we left off? Any nuggets you want to drop?
No, it was that was a great talk. Again, thank you for having me. It's certainly not going to be 2 more years since I come back. I promise you. We're working on getting back up here to the Florence area. So,
Okay.
you know, that's all in the works. Heather has 1 more year of law school after this, and we'll see where we, you know, we're looking to get out of Alabaster and Birmingham and get back up this way. So
Sounds good. How long you and your wife been married?
we actually get married this year. We're getting married October 19th.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've been together. We met at UNA, right? So there are some reasons college is good.
Yeah.
That's one of them.
I like that.
But yeah, we met at UNA, been together since July of 2020, and we'll get married this October.
Well, congratulations, my man.
Thank you, buddy.
It's good to have you on
Thank you.
tonight, man. Dwayne, you want me to close it out? Or what we doing? All right, this has been another episode of the Elevated Chat Room. Elevate your mind, elevate your life. We had a special guest with us on tonight, Mr. Hunter Johnson. We thank you for coming through.
Thank you for having me.
The topic was overcoming education's hurdles, insights from an educator. Be sure to like, comment, share, let the world know we coming, we here.